The auctioneer's voice cracked as he read the authentication certificate. His hands trembled so badly he had to set the paper down on the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, barely above a whisper, "we need to pause this auction." The room at Christie's went silent. 200 wealthy collectors stared at me, this weathered old man in a borrowed suit, standing next to a painting everyone had assumed was a minor work by an unknown artist. "This piece," the auctioneer continued, "has just been authenticated as a lost Vermeer. The estimated value is $93 million. But let me back up. Let me tell you how I ended up in that auction house on a rainy afternoon in New York City, broke and desperate at 67 years old, clutching a canvas I'd found wrapped in brown paper at the back of my late wife's closet. My name is Robert Mitchell. I spent 40 years as an architect in Chicago, designing everything from suburban homes to downtown office buildings. I married my wife, Margaret, when we were both 24. She was an art history professor at the University of Chicago, one of those rare academics who actually loved teaching. We built a beautiful life together in Lincoln Park. I designed us a brownstone renovation that Margaret filled with books, plants, and art prints she'd collected from museum gift shops. We had one child, a daughter named Lisa, born when we were 28. Margaret passed away from ovarian cancer 7 years ago. She was only 60. It shattered me in ways I still can't fully describe. Lisa was 32 when her mother died. Already established in her career as a marketing executive, she seemed devastated by the loss. She'd call me every Sunday, checking in, asking how I was coping. I appreciated it more than I could say. 3 years after Margaret's death, Lisa married Kevin Hartwell. He was a financial advisor at a prestigious firm downtown, the kind of man who wore expensive watches and talked about wealth optimization at dinner parties. I paid for most of their wedding at the Drake Hotel, about $60,000. I wanted to honor Margaret's memory by being there for our daughter. I should have paid more attention to the warning signs. It started subtly. Kevin would ask questions over holiday dinners about my retirement accounts, my pension from the architecture firm, the value of our brownstone. He framed it as professional concern. "Robert, you're sitting on significant assets," he said one Thanksgiving, swirling wine in his glass. "Have you thought about estate planning? Tax efficiency? Lisa and I worry about you managing all this alone." I should have questioned it more. But he was my son-in-law. Lisa seemed to trust him completely. And honestly, after Margaret died, I didn't have the energy to fight about anything. Over the next 18 months, I signed documents Kevin prepared. He explained them quickly, using financial jargon I didn't fully understand. "Standard wealth management," he'd say, smiling that practiced smile. "We're protecting your legacy, protecting Lisa's inheritance." I signed a power of attorney. I signed trust documents. I signed transfer papers for investment accounts that Kevin said would be consolidated for efficiency. Then came my 65th birthday. Lisa and Kevin invited me to dinner at a French restaurant in the Gold Coast. I thought we were celebrating. Instead, Kevin slid a manila envelope across the white tablecloth. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it, Dad." It was a petition to the court. My own daughter was seeking emergency guardianship over me, claiming I was mentally incompetent to manage my affairs. I couldn't breathe. The restaurant seemed to spin around me. "Lisa, what is this? This is insane." Kevin leaned forward, his voice low and professional. "Robert, we have serious concerns about your cognitive state. You've been making erratic decisions, forgetting conversations. We've consulted with specialists who agree that it's best if Lisa takes over management of your assets, while you can still enjoy some quality of life. I'm not incompetent. I still consult on projects. I just finished reviewing plans for a hospital renovation. Projects you've been mismanaging," Kevin said smoothly. "We have documentation, missed deadlines, client complaints, financial irregularities. All lies." But he was a financial advisor who knew how to build a case. And Lisa sat there nodding along, not meeting my eyes. "Daddy, we're doing this for your own good," she said. "You'll be taken care of. You just need to step back and let us help." I hired a lawyer, of course. Patricia Okonkwo, a solo practitioner I found through the State Bar Referral Service. I couldn't afford the big downtown firms. I'd trusted Kevin with my finances, and suddenly I discovered that my accounts had been restructured in ways I didn't understand. The liquid cash I thought I had was tied up in trusts Kevin controlled. The court hearing was a nightmare. We went before Judge Harrison at the Cook County Courthouse in October. I sat there in my charcoal suit, the one I'd worn to Margaret's funeral, watching my daughter's attorney present fabricated evidence of my mental decline. "Your Honor," the attorney said, "a sharp young man named Bradley Cole. We have extensive documentation of Mr. Mitchell's deteriorating cognitive function. Financial records showing confused transactions. 3 affidavits from former colleagues expressing concern about his judgment and memory. Former colleagues I'd had professional disagreements with over the years. Now they were testifying that I was losing my mind. Furthermore," Cole continued, "Mr. Mitchell has become paranoid and hostile. His daughter Lisa has tried to help, offering support and guidance, but he's responded with accusations and anger. This is textbook behavior for early-stage dementia. Patricia tried her best. She really did. But she was a general practitioner going up against a specialist in guardianship law. She had no resources for expert witnesses, no way to counter their carefully constructed narrative. The worst part was when Lisa took the stand. My own daughter, the baby I'd held in my arms, who I'd taught to ride a bike and walk down the aisle at her wedding. "Tell the court about your father's recent behavior," Cole prompted. Lisa's voice was steady, rehearsed. "He's changed since Mom died. He forgets things we've talked about. He gets confused about dates and appointments. Last month, he accused Kevin of stealing from him, which is ridiculous. Kevin has only ever tried to help manage Dad's finances responsibly. I love my father, but he needs professional oversight. I'm scared for him." Lies. All lies. But she delivered them with tears in her eyes, and the judge looked at her with sympathy. Judge Harrison reviewed the documents, the legal papers I'd signed, Kevin's financial reports. My signature was on everything. "Mr. Mitchell," the judge said, looking at me with what I suppose was meant to be compassion. "I understand this is difficult to accept, but based on the evidence presented, I'm ruling that you are no longer competent to manage your financial affairs. Your daughter, Lisa Mitchell Hartwell, is hereby appointed as your guardian and conservator. All assets will be transferred to the family trust with Lisa as primary manager." "Your Honor, this is wrong," I said, standing up. Patricia grabbed my arm. "My daughter is lying. Her husband is a fraud. They're stealing from me." "Mr. Mitchell, outbursts like this only reinforce the concerns raised in this petition. Please sit down." "I won't sit down. This is my life. They're taking everything I worked for." The gavel came down. "This hearing is concluded. Mr. Mitchell, I encourage you to work cooperatively with your daughter during this transition. It's for your own well-being." Outside the courtroom, I confronted Lisa. "How could you do this?" "I'm your father. I raised you. I was there for everything." She wouldn't look at me. Kevin answered instead. "Robert, you need to accept reality. You're not well. Lisa is protecting you. You'll receive a monthly allowance. You'll be comfortable." "A monthly allowance. From my own money?" "From the trust's money," Kevin corrected, as if reading my thoughts, "which Lisa manages now, as the court ordered." Over the next 3 weeks, I watched my entire life disappear. My brownstone in Lincoln Park, worth about $1.8 million, was transferred to the trust. Kevin sold it within 2 months. My retirement accounts, my pension, my investment portfolio, everything I'd saved over 4 decades, gone into a trust I no longer controlled. My architecture firm shares, worth another $900,000, liquidated. The total came to just over $3.6 million. Everything I'd built over a lifetime vanished into accounts my daughter and her husband controlled. Lisa set me up in a 1-bedroom apartment in Rogers Park. Not dangerous, but not the neighborhood I'd spent my life in either. A cramped unit with water stains on the ceiling and a view of a parking lot. She deposited $2,000 a month into a new bank account in my name. "This should cover your expenses, Dad," she said when she dropped off the keys. "Rent's paid, you've got enough for groceries and utilities. Try not to overspend." Overspend. I'd gone from a brownstone I'd designed myself to budgeting $2,000 a month at 65 years old. I spent the first weeks in that apartment in a fog. I'd wake up on the thin mattress and forget where I was. Then it would all crash back. My daughter had betrayed me, used the legal system to rob me blind, and there was nothing I could do. I tried to appeal. Patricia said we could, but it would cost money I didn't have, and Kevin had covered every angle. The documentation was airtight. Fabricated, but airtight. So I sat in that apartment and watched my life crumble. 65 years old, broke and alone. No wife, no daughter, no career, no purpose. I stopped shaving, stopped cooking real meals. I'd microwave frozen dinners and eat them standing at the counter, staring at nothing. What was the point of pretending life was normal when everything had been destroyed? One night in late January, I couldn't sleep. It was 3 a.m, the kind of cold Chicago night where the wind off Lake Michigan cuts right through the walls. I started going through boxes I'd managed to save from the brownstone. Lisa had been efficient in liquidating my assets, but in her rush, she'd let me keep boxes of personal items. Photo albums, old paperwork, Margaret's belongings. In one box, I found Margaret's leather portfolio, the one she'd used for academic conferences. Cracked and worn, but I remembered giving it to her for our 10th anniversary. I opened it, expecting nothing important. Inside were some old lecture notes, a conference program from 1995, a few art postcards, and at the very bottom, a sealed envelope with my name on it. Robert, the envelope said in Margaret's handwriting. Open only if you truly need this. My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside was a letter and a business card. My darling Robert, the letter began. If you're reading this, something has gone wrong. I hope you never need to open this envelope, but I've always believed in preparing for the worst. Do you remember when I spent 6 months in Amsterdam in 1989, doing research on Dutch Golden Age painting? I told you I was studying conservation techniques. That was true. But something else happened there. I discovered something extraordinary in the basement of a small gallery. A painting everyone assumed was a minor work by a student of Vermeer. Something about it didn't sit right with me. I spent months studying it, comparing brushwork, analyzing pigments with a colleague at the Rijksmuseum. Robert, it's real. It's an undocumented Vermeer. A small domestic scene, probably painted around 1658. The gallery owner had no idea what he had. I bought it for 12,000 guilders, our entire savings at the time. I know I should have told you, but I was afraid you'd think I was crazy. I was afraid I was wrong. I wasn't wrong. I've kept it hidden all these years, wrapped in acid-free paper, in the climate-controlled storage unit I rented under my maiden name. The information is on the card. The monthly fees have been auto-paid from an account I set up decades ago. It should still be there, waiting. If you ever need this, Robert, use it. Sell it. It will be worth more than enough to take care of you for the rest of your life. I had it authenticated by 2 independent experts in 1996. Their certificates are with the painting. I love you. I've always loved you. And even after I'm gone, I wanted to make sure you'd be protected, no matter what. Forever yours, Margaret. I stared at the letter until the words blurred. Tears streamed down my face, dripping onto the paper. Margaret. Even 7 years after her death, she was still protecting me. The business card was for a climate-controlled storage facility in Oak Park, Unit 847. The code was Margaret's birthday. At 7 the next morning, I was standing outside that facility in my old winter coat, waiting for it to open. The manager looked at me strangely, this haggard old man clutching a faded business card. But Margaret's name was on the account. Her death certificate, which I still carried in my wallet, was enough to grant me access. Unit 847 was small, maybe 5 feet by 5 feet, and inside, wrapped in brown archival paper, was a painting about 18 inches by 14 inches. I unwrapped it carefully. A young woman sat near a window, reading a letter. The light fell across her face in that distinctive way, that golden, almost supernatural Vermeer light. The blue of her dress was that famous blue, ultramarine made from lapis lazuli. I'm not an art expert. I'm an architect. But even I could see this was something extraordinary. The authentication certificates were there. just as Margaret had promised, signed by experts whose names I recognized from her academic circles. I rewrapped the painting carefully and took it home. That night, I barely slept. I researched Vermeers on my laptop. Only 36 authenticated paintings by the master exist. The last one to sell went for millions. And this one, if the authentication was legitimate, would be unprecedented. An unknown Vermeer, hidden for decades. The next morning, I took the painting to the Art Institute of Chicago. I told them I'd inherited it from my wife, an art history professor, and asked if they could examine it. They almost threw me out. Some confused old man with a painting wrapped in brown paper, claiming it might be a Vermeer, but one of the curators had known Margaret professionally. She agreed to take a look. 3 hours later, I was sitting in her office while she made phone calls with shaking hands. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, her voice unsteady, "I need to bring in more experts. But preliminary examination suggests this is genuine. If confirmed, you're holding something that could sell for 70, 80, possibly over $100 million. I sat there in silence. Then I said something that surprised us both. "I need a lawyer, the best lawyer in Chicago. Money is no object." She gave me a name, Victoria Chen, a partner at one of the city's top litigation firms, the kind of lawyer who represented corporations and billionaires. I called her office that afternoon. "Miss Chen is very selective about her cases," her assistant said. "May I ask what this concerns?" "Tell her it involves elder abuse, conservatorship fraud, and a $90 million painting. Tell her Robert Mitchell needs to take his life back." Victoria called me personally within the hour. 3 days later, I was sitting in her corner office on the 63rd floor of a downtown tower, Lake Michigan glittering in the distance. Her retainer was $300,000. I told her she'd be paid when the painting sold. "That's not how I usually work," she said. "I'm not a usual case. And when you hear what happened to me, you're going to want to take this case on contingency just for the satisfaction of winning it." I told her everything. The manipulation, the fraudulent claims of incompetence, the way Kevin had used his financial expertise to restructure my assets while pretending to help, the way my daughter had stood in court and lied about her own father. Victoria didn't interrupt. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm going to enjoy destroying them. First, we're going to get you a full neurological evaluation from the top specialists in the city. Then, we're going to hire a forensic accountant to audit every single transaction Kevin made on your behalf. And then we're going to walk back into that courtroom and tear their case apart piece by piece." "How long?" 4 months, maybe 5. "We need to be thorough." "There's one more thing," I said. "I want it public. I want everyone who saw me humiliated to see them exposed." "That," Victoria said, "can absolutely be arranged." She also connected me with Dr. Samuel Park, a forensic accountant who specialized in financial fraud. What he uncovered made my blood boil. Kevin's firm had charged me over $700,000 in management fees for services that should have cost a fraction of that. He'd created fake investment reports, phantom consultations, inflated transaction costs. He'd essentially embezzled $750,000 while I was signing papers I didn't understand. The brownstone sale was even worse. Kevin had arranged for it to be purchased by a shell company connected to a friend of his. They'd immediately resold it for $2.5 million, pocketing the difference. The neurological evaluations came back clean. 3 independent specialists, Dr. Rachel Okonkwo, Dr. James Liu, and Dr. Maria Santos, all certified that I had absolutely no cognitive impairment. I was sharp, competent, and had been wrongfully declared incompetent. The former colleagues who'd testified against me? Dr. Park found evidence that Kevin had paid each of them $15,000. Bank records, text messages, everything documented. We filed in May, requesting an emergency hearing to vacate the guardianship order. We also filed criminal referrals with the state's attorney and complaints with the Financial Regulatory Board. The hearing was set for June 12th before Judge Angela Williams. Victoria made sure certain journalists knew to attend. Lisa and Kevin walked into that courtroom looking confident. Why wouldn't they? They'd won before. They had millions of my dollars. They thought I was still that broken old man living on $2,000 a month in Rogers Park. They didn't know about Margaret's painting. They didn't know I could afford Victoria Chen. I was there at the petitioner's table, clean-shaven for the first time in months, wearing a new suit. Lisa's eyes widened when she saw me. Kevin whispered something to Bradley Cole, their attorney. Judge Williams entered and we stood. We're here on an emergency motion to vacate the guardianship order entered last October, Victoria began. Your Honor, this case represents one of the most egregious examples of elder abuse and guardianship fraud I've seen in my career. She laid it out methodically, the neurological evaluations proving I was competent, the forensic accounting showing Kevin's embezzlement, the evidence that witnesses had been paid to lie. Dr. Okonkwo took the stand first, explaining in clear terms that I showed no signs of cognitive decline whatsoever. Then Dr. Liu, then Dr. Santos, 3 experts, all saying the same thing. I watched the color drain from Lisa's face. Dr. Park presented his findings next. Charts and graphs showing exactly how Kevin had structured the fraud. Every fake invoice, every inflated fee, every phantom consultation. Furthermore, Your Honor, Victoria continued, we have evidence that Mr. Kevin Hartwell paid 3 individuals a total of $45,000 to provide false testimony about Mr. Mitchell's mental state. We have bank records, text messages, and one of those individuals has agreed to testify. Thomas Brennan, a former colleague I'd had a falling out with years ago, took the stand. He looked ashamed. Mr. Hartwell approached me in August. He said quietly, he offered me $15,000 if I would sign an affidavit saying I was concerned about Robert's mental competence. I needed the money. I'd just been laid off. He looked at me. I'm sorry, Robert. What I said wasn't true. You were always sharp, always professional. I lied for money. Kevin was gripping the table so hard his knuckles were white. Lisa was crying, but not the calculated tears she'd shed in the first hearing. These were real. Your Honor, Victoria said, we're requesting that the guardianship be immediately vacated, that all assets be returned to Mr. Mitchell, and that this matter be referred to the state's attorney for criminal prosecution. We're also filing civil suits against both Miss Mitchell Hartwell and Mr. Hartwell for fraud, elder abuse, conversion, breach of fiduciary duty, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Judge Williams reviewed the documents in silence. The courtroom was packed. Journalists were taking notes. 2 sketch artists were capturing the scene. Finally, the judge spoke. I've reviewed the evidence presented today. The neurological evaluations clearly demonstrate that Mr. Mitchell is and was competent. The forensic analysis reveals systematic fraud and embezzlement. The testimony about paid witnesses is deeply disturbing. She looked at Bradley Cole. Counselor, do your clients wish to respond? Cole stood slowly. Your Honor, I'd like to request a recess to consult with my clients. Denied. This is an emergency hearing, and the evidence speaks for itself. Your clients had ample opportunity to present accurate information the first time. Instead, they presented fabricated evidence and perjured testimony. She looked directly at Lisa and Kevin. Stand up, both of you. They stood, Lisa trembling, Kevin's jaw clenched. The guardianship order entered in October is hereby vacated. It was obtained through fraud and should never have been granted. All assets are to be immediately returned to Robert Mitchell. She paused. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the state's attorney's office for criminal investigation. Mr. Hartwell, given the evidence of financial fraud and fiduciary breach, I'm also notifying the appropriate regulatory bodies. Your career as a financial advisor is likely over. Your Honor, Kevin started. I'm not finished. You used your professional expertise to prey on a vulnerable person. You manipulated the legal system to steal from your own father-in-law. You paid witnesses to lie under oath. What you did was calculated, predatory, and despicable. She turned to Lisa. And you betrayed your own father, a man who raised you, who supported you, who loved you unconditionally. You stood in a courtroom and lied about his mental state so you could steal his life savings. I don't know what's broken inside you that allowed you to do that, but you will face consequences. This court is adjourned. Mr. Mitchell, you have my sincerest apologies for what the court system allowed to happen to you. The gavel came down. I stood there, shaking. Victoria put a hand on my shoulder. It's over, Robert. You won. Lisa approached me as I was leaving. Security stepped forward, but I waved them back. Daddy, please, she said, mascara running down her cheeks. Let me explain. Kevin. He manipulated me too. I didn't understand what we were really doing. Don't. My voice was ice. Don't call me that. You lost that right when you stood in court and said I was losing my mind. When you watched them take everything from me and moved me into that apartment. When you gave me an allowance from my own money, like I was a child. I'm sorry. Kevin convinced me it was for the best. That you couldn't handle things anymore. I believed him. You believed what you wanted to believe, because it was convenient. Because it made you rich. Every lie you told. Every paper you signed. That was a choice you made. Not Kevin. You. Please. I'm your daughter. I looked at her for a long moment. This stranger wearing my daughter's face. I had a daughter once. She died in that courtroom last October. You're just someone who happened to grow up in my house. I walked away. The story broke that evening. The Tribune ran it front page. Local news led with it. Financial advisor and wife accused of defrauding father in guardianship scheme. Elder abuse case exposes gaps in conservatorship system. The Vermeer authenticated 2 weeks later. The final report confirmed it was genuine. An unknown masterpiece by Johannes Vermeer, probably painted in Delft around 1657. Christie's estimated its auction value at $75 to $95 million. The auction itself became an international event. Collectors flew in from Europe, Asia, the Middle East. The bidding started at $40 million and climbed for 9 minutes. Final sale, $93,400,000. After Christie's commission and taxes, I netted just over $71 million. The criminal trial was in September. Kevin was charged with fraud, theft, forgery, and financial elder abuse. Lisa was charged as an accomplice. Kevin's attorney tried to negotiate. Kevin would plead guilty to lesser charges in exchange for a lighter sentence. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Diana Washington, refused. Your client didn't just steal money, she told the court. He stole this man's dignity, his independence, his relationship with his daughter. He systematically destroyed his life while pretending to protect him. That deserves the maximum penalty. Kevin got 6 years in federal prison. Lisa got 2 years. They were also ordered to pay full restitution, though everything they'd taken was already back in my control, plus damages. Kevin's financial licenses were permanently revoked. His career, the thing he'd valued more than family or integrity, was over. I moved back to Lincoln Park, though not to my old brownstone. Someone else lives there now. Instead, I bought a new place, a quiet townhouse with a garden, the kind of home Margaret would have loved. One evening in November, a year after everything started, I sat in my study with a glass of scotch, Margaret's favorite. On my desk was a letter that had arrived from the Women's Correctional Facility downstate. I opened it. Dad, it began. I know I don't deserve to call you that anymore. I know I don't deserve forgiveness or even a response to this letter. I've had a lot of time to think in here. About what I did, about why I did it. Kevin made it seem so logical. He said you were declining, that you'd thank us eventually for protecting your assets. I wanted to believe him. It was easier than admitting we were stealing from my own father. The truth is, I was greedy. I saw that money, and I convinced myself I deserved it. That you'd lived long enough, accomplished enough, that it was my turn. I was wrong. I was so wrong. I think about Mom a lot, about how ashamed she'd be of me. She loved you so much, and I betrayed both of you. I've lost Kevin. He filed for divorce last month. I've lost my career, my friends, my freedom. But the worst thing I lost was you. You were a good father. You didn't deserve any of this. I don't expect you to write back. I don't expect you to visit. But I needed you to know that I understand now what I did. And I'm sorry, not because I got caught, because I hurt you. Your daughter, Lisa. I read the letter twice. Then I folded it and put it in my desk drawer. I didn't know if I could ever forgive her. What she did wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a calculated campaign, months of lies and manipulation, designed to steal everything I had. She didn't just take my money. She tried to take my identity, my competence, my very selfhood. But I also wasn't going to let bitterness consume the rest of my life. Margaret wouldn't have wanted that. The next week, I met with attorneys to establish the Margaret Mitchell Foundation. We'd provide free legal representation to elderly people facing fraudulent guardianship claims, forensic accounting services, medical evaluations, everything I'd needed but couldn't afford when this nightmare started. I funded it with $10 million to start. More would come as the investments Margaret left me continued to grow. I also established the Margaret Mitchell Scholarship at the University of Chicago's Art History Department. Full tuition for 3 students every year. Preference given to those studying Dutch Golden Age painting. On what would have been Margaret's 68th birthday, I drove up to our old favorite spot along Lake Michigan. It was early December, cold and gray, the water churning under heavy clouds. I brought a small framed photo of her, the one from our anniversary trip to Paris. "You knew," I said to her picture. "Somehow you knew I might need protecting someday. You hid that painting for 35 years, just in case." A seagull cried overhead. The wind bit through my coat. "I miss you every day, but I'm okay now. Better than okay. I'm using what you left me to help other people. People like me, who get betrayed by the ones they're supposed to trust." I touched the frame gently. I don't know if I'll ever talk to Lisa again. Part of me wants to. She's still my daughter, somewhere underneath everything that happened. But trust isn't something you can rebuild just because you want to. She has to earn it. And I don't know if she can. The clouds parted briefly, letting through a shaft of pale winter sunlight. "Thank you, Margaret, for everything, for the life we had, for your brilliance, for loving me enough to protect me even after you were gone." I stood there until the light faded, then drove home. That Christmas, I had dinner with old friends, colleagues from the architecture firm, neighbors from the old days, people who'd known Margaret and me when Lisa was small, when our lives were simple and happy. "You could have become bitter," my friend Harold said over dessert. "After everything they did to you, most people would have." "Margaret wouldn't have wanted that," I said. "And honestly, being bitter takes too much energy. I'd rather spend what time I have left doing something useful." I received another letter in February. This one was from Kevin, also from prison. I burned it without reading it. Some betrayals don't deserve the courtesy of attention. Spring came slowly to Chicago that year. I spent it working with the foundation, reviewing cases, talking to elderly people who were going through what I'd experienced. Their gratitude was overwhelming. Many of them cried when they learned someone would help them fight back. "You don't know what this means," an 82-year-old woman named Dorothy told me. Her nephew was trying to have her declared incompetent. "I thought I was alone. I thought nobody would believe me." "I believe you," I said. "And we're going to make sure you keep control of your own life." She hugged me so hard I thought my ribs might crack. On a warm evening in May, I sat on my townhouse patio with that same glass of scotch. The garden was blooming, full of the flowers Margaret used to plant. I'd hired a gardener to recreate what she'd done at our old place. 68 years old, a lifetime of work behind me, more money than I could ever spend, and a strange, quiet peace I hadn't expected to find. My daughter had tried to destroy me. My son-in-law had seen me as nothing more than a source of wealth to be exploited. They'd used the legal system, the institutions supposed to protect vulnerable people, as a weapon against me. But they hadn't broken me. Margaret's love, reaching across the years, had saved me. I thought about something she used to say when things got hard. "The world will try to diminish you, Robert. Don't let it. You decide who you are." I hadn't let them diminish me. I'd fought back. I'd won. And now I was using that victory to help others do the same.